She bathed him while he was unconscious. But when the millionaire suddenly woke up and looked into her eyes, he whispered 3 words that changed her life forever. The prestigious Silvercrest Hospital was known for treating the wealthiest and most influential patients in the city. Among its staff was Emma Carter, a compassionate young nurse who took pride in her work, no matter how demanding. One evening, she was assigned to care for a mysterious coma patient, Lucas Thorne, a reclusive millionaire who had been found unconscious in his penthouse under suspicious circumstances. Lucas had been in a coma for 3 weeks, with no family or friends visiting him. The hospital staff whispered about his cold demeanor and ruthless business reputation, but Emma refused to judge. She treated him with the same kindness she showed all her patients. Little did she know, her life was about to change forever. Every evening, Emma meticulously bathed Lucas, changed his IV, and spoke to him softly, hoping some part of him could hear her. "You must have quite a story, Mr. Thorne," she murmured one night, adjusting his blanket. "I hope you wake up soon." Then, something strange happened. His fingers twitched. Emma gasped, her heart racing. Was it a reflex, or was he actually responding? She leaned closer. "Mr. Thorne, can you hear me?" No response. Disappointed but undeterred, she continued her routine. But the next night, as she was washing his face, his eyelids fluttered. And then, he opened his eyes. Lucas Thorne's piercing blue eyes locked onto Emma's, filled with confusion and intensity. His voice was hoarse from weeks of silence. "Who are you?" Emma's hands trembled as she pressed the emergency call button. I'm Nurse Emma Carter. You've been in a coma, Mr. Thorne. You're safe now." But Lucas didn't seem to care about the doctors rushing in. His gaze never left hers. "You, talk to me," he whispered. "I heard you." Emma's breath caught. All those nights she had spoken to him. He had been listening. As Lucas recovered, he stunned everyone by refusing any other nurse. Only Emma, he insisted. The hospital had no choice but to comply. After all, he was their wealthiest benefactor. One evening, when they were alone, Lucas grabbed Emma's wrist gently. "You saved me," he said. "Not just my body, my soul." Emma blushed. "It's my job, Mr. Thorne." "Call me Lucas," he murmured. Then he dropped a bombshell. "I remember everything from my coma, including the person who tried to kill me." Emma's blood ran cold. "What?" Lucas's expression darkened. "And now, they'll come for you too." Title: A young nurse bathed a millionaire in a coma. But when he suddenly woke up, something miraculous happened. The sterile hospital room, usually a place of quiet healing, now felt like a cage with invisible bars tightening around them. Emma's pulse hammered in her throat as Lucas's words, "They'll come for you too," reverberated in her skull. The overhead fluorescents buzzed faintly, their clinical brightness at odds with the shadows pooling in the corners of the room. She gripped the edge of Lucas's bed, her knuckles whitening. The man before her was no longer just a patient. He was a storm she'd been pulled into without warning. Lucas shifted weakly against the pillows, his once lifeless body now tense with urgency. The coma had hollowed his cheeks and paled his golden complexion, but his eyes, sharp, blue, and startlingly alert, burned with an intensity that made Emma's breath hitch. He swallowed hard, the IV line tugging at his forearm as he leaned closer. "Daniel Cross," he rasped, the name dripping with venom. "My partner." The word twisted like a knife. For years, I trusted him. Then I found discrepancies, millions funneled into offshore accounts. When I confronted him, his voice cracked, and for a heartbeat, Emma saw raw fear flicker across his face. A chill skittered down Emma's spine. She knew of Daniel Cross, of course. His face splashed across business magazines, his charity galas covered by the press. The idea that such a man could be a murderer was surreal. Yet Lucas's trembling hands, the sweat beading on his brow. These weren't the theatrics of a delusional patient. This was terror. He staged it as an overdose. Lucas continued, his gaze darting to the door. Knew I'd never touched drugs. But the media bought it. Eccentric billionaire collapses from stress and substance abuse. Perfect cover. A bitter laugh escaped him. And the coma, just a happy accident for him, kept me silent while he tied up loose ends. Emma's mind raced. The monitors, the IV drips, the nightly checks, had any of it been safe? Her stomach lurched. What if Daniel had someone here? The hospital staff, the orderlies, even the doctors. How many were on his payroll? She thought of the way Dr. Kettering had avoided Lucas's case, the way certain nurses whispered in the break room. Paranoia coiled around her ribs. Then Lucas's hand closed over hers, warm and grounding. "Emma," he said, low and urgent, "you're the only one who talked to me like I was still human. Not a paycheck, not a headline. That's why." A shrill beep from the heart monitor sliced through his words. Emma's head snapped toward the machine. The rhythm was steady, but the alarm blared anyway. Malfunction? Her training kicked in. She reached to adjust the leads. Then she saw it, a shadow shifting beneath the door's narrow gap. Too tall to be a nurse, too still to be innocent. Lucas's fingers dug into her wrist. "They're here." The door creaked open. The man who stepped inside wore a tailored black suit, his polished shoes silent on the linoleum. He wasn't hospital staff, no ID badge, no scrubs. His smile was cordial, but his eyes were dead, like a shark's. "Mr. Thorne," he said smoothly. "You're awake. How? Unfortunate." Emma's blood turned to ice. She stepped forward instinctively, blocking Lucas. "Visiting hours are over," she said, forcing steel into her voice. "You need to leave." The man's smile didn't waver. He reached into his jacket, slow, deliberate, and Emma's breath stopped. A gun. The glint of metal was brief but unmistakable. Time fractured. Lucas yanked her backward just as the silenced shot whipped past her ear, shattering the monitor in a spray of sparks. The smell of burnt plastic filled the air. Emma stumbled, her hip hitting the bedside table, sending a tray of instruments clattering to the floor. "Run." Lucas rode, already tearing the IV from his arm. They bolted for the emergency exit, bare feet slapping against cold tile. Behind them, the assassin cursed, then footsteps gave chase. The stairwell was a blur of concrete and flickering lights. Emma's lungs burned as she hurled herself down the steps, Lucas gripping her elbow to steady them both. He moved with surprising strength for someone who'd been bedridden for weeks, but she could hear his labored breaths, could see the way his muscles trembled with strain. "Keep moving," he gritted out. They burst into the parking garage, the damp chill of the underground biting at Emma's exposed arms. Lucas scanned the rows of cars, then pointed to a sleek black sedan near the exit. "There. Keys are in the sun visor." Emma gaped. "You planned this?" "Insurance," he said grimly, wrenching the door open. The engine rode to life just as their pursuer skidded into the garage. Another shot, this one pinged off the sedan's hood. Emma ducked, her heart in her throat, as Lucas slammed the accelerator. Tires screeched. The garage exit loomed, the armbar splintering as they rammed through. Then they were free, hurtling into the neon-lit city night. Silence settled over the car, thick and suffocating. Emma's hands shook as she pressed them to her face. She'd nearly died. Because of Lucas. Because she cared too much. "Why me?" she whispered. Lucas's grip on the steering wheel tightened. "Because Daniel's thorough. He'd see you as a witness, someone I might have confided in." His voice dropped. "And because I did hear you, Emma, every word. You kept me anchored." The raw honesty in his tone made her chest ache. But the danger wasn't over. Somewhere in the city, a killer was regrouping. And now, Emma was irrevocably tangled in Lucas Thorne's war. The hospital corridor stretched before them like a tunnel of flickering fluorescent lights and endless doorways, each one a potential hiding spot or a potential trap. Emma's bare feet slapped against the cold linoleum, her breath coming in sharp, panicked gasps as adrenaline surged through her veins. Behind her, Lucas moved with surprising agility for a man who had just woken from a coma, his hospital gown flapping around his legs, his muscles straining with the effort of keeping pace. The sound of the assassin's footsteps echoed behind them, steady and relentless, a predator closing in on wounded prey. Emma's mind raced. Every instinct screamed at her to stop, to turn and face the threat. But logic told her that would be suicide. The man chasing them was armed, professional, and clearly willing to kill. She had no weapons, no backup, and no time to call for help. The only advantage they had was the element of surprise. The assassin hadn't expected Lucas to be awake, let alone capable of running. But that advantage wouldn't last long. Lucas grabbed her wrist, yanking her into a narrow service stairwell. The door slammed shut behind them, plunging them into near darkness. The only light came from a flickering bulb above, casting jagged shadows on the concrete walls. Emma pressed her back against the cold surface, her chest heaving as she tried to steady her breathing. Lucas's face was inches from hers, his eyes wild with urgency. "We can't stay here," he whispered, his voice rough. "He'll check the stairwell next." Emma nodded, her fingers trembling as she wiped sweat from her brow. "Where do we go? We can't just run into the streets like this." Lucas's jaw tightened. "Parking garage. My car's there. If we can reach it, we can disappear." The plan was desperate, but it was all they had. Emma took a deep breath and nodded. Together, they began descending the stairs, their movements silent and deliberate. Every creak of metal, every distant echo of footsteps from the floors above sent a fresh wave of terror through Emma. She could feel the seconds ticking away, each one bringing their pursuer closer. Then, from somewhere above, a door crashed open. Heavy footsteps thudded against the stairs. He was coming. Lucas cursed under his breath and pulled Emma faster, their descent turning into a controlled freefall. Her bare feet stung as they hit the edges of the steps, but she didn't dare slow down. The garage level was just one more flight below. If they could make it, they had a chance. They burst through the door into the dimly lit parking garage, the air thick with the smell of oil and damp concrete. Rows of cars stretched out before them, their shapes blurred in the low light. Lucas didn't hesitate. He sprinted toward a sleek black sedan parked near the exit, its tinted windows reflecting the flickering overhead lights. Emma followed, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Just as they reached the car, a gunshot rang out, the sound ricocheting off the concrete walls. The bullet struck the sedan's hood with a metallic ping, sending sparks flying. Emma ducked instinctively, her body folding into itself, as if she could somehow make herself smaller. Lucas wrenched open the driver's side door and reached for the sun visor. A set of keys fell into his palm. "Get in," he barked. Emma didn't need to be told twice. She threw herself into the passenger seat, just as another shot shattered the side mirror. The engine roared to life, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Lucas slammed the accelerator, and the car lurched forward, tires screeching against the pavement. The assassin was still running toward them, his gun raised for another shot. But then they were moving, the car tearing through the garage, the exit ramp looming ahead. The wooden arm bar blocking their way splintered as they crushed through it, the impact jolting them in their seats. And then freedom. The city streets stretched before them, neon lights blurring into streaks as Lucas wove through traffic. Emma finally allowed herself to exhale, her body trembling with the aftershocks of fear. But as she glanced at Lucas, she saw that his grip on the steering wheel hadn't loosened. His knuckles were white, his jaw clenched. This wasn't over. Not even close. The black sedan tore through the labyrinth of downtown streets, its tinted windows reflecting the neon glow of the city like distorted mirrors. Emma sat rigid in the passenger seat, her hospital scrubs clinging to her skin with a mixture of sweat and rainwater that had begun pelting the windshield. Every muscle in her body remained tense, still vibrating with the aftershocks of adrenaline. The digital clock on the dashboard read 2:17 a.m., just 37 minutes since their desperate escape from Silvercrest Hospital. Yet it felt like they'd entered an entirely different lifetime. Lucas drove with a focused intensity, his hands at precisely 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, his blue eyes constantly scanning mirrors and side streets. The coma had left his movements slightly stiff, but his driving betrayed military precision. Almost there, he murmured, taking a sudden right into an unmarked alley that made Emma instinctively grab the door handle. The car descended into an underground parking garage beneath what appeared to be a nondescript office building, stopping before a retinal scanner that glowed ominously red in the darkness. The safe house revealed itself in stages as they ascended in a private elevator. First came the smell, not the antiseptic sterility of the hospital, but warm cedar and something faintly metallic. Then the lighting, soft and golden, revealing a sprawling penthouse that somehow managed to be both luxurious and impersonal. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the storm-lashed city, the glass undoubtedly bulletproof. Emma noted the lack of personal photographs, the carefully curated artwork that looked expensive but soulless. This wasn't a home. It was a fortress disguised as one. Security systems biometric, Lucas explained, pressing his palm against a hidden panel near the entrance. The entire west wall lit up with a holographic display of the building's security status. "You're now registered. No one gets in or out without us knowing." His voice carried the casual certainty of someone long accustomed to living under threat. Emma's nursing instincts finally overrode her shock. "You shouldn't be on your feet like this," she said, noticing how he favored his left side. Without thinking, she reached for his wrist to check his pulse, then froze, suddenly aware of the intimacy of the gesture. The realization struck her like a physical blow. This wasn't her patient anymore. The power dynamic between nurse and comatose billionaire had irrevocably shattered the moment he grabbed her hand in that hospital room. Lucas didn't pull away. Instead, he turned his wrists so their palms pressed together, his skin warm against her rain-chilled fingers. "You're still shaking," he observed quietly. The clinical observation carried an unexpected tenderness that made Emma's breath catch. The safe house's medical suite put most hospitals to shame. Emma moved on autopilot, gathering supplies from glass-fronted cabinets, while Lucas sat on the edge of an exam table that probably cost more than her yearly salary. As she cleaned the IV site on his arm, her fingers registered the raised scars along his ribs, old wounds that told stories he hadn't shared. The silence between them grew heavy, charged with all the unspoken questions and revelations of the past impossible hours. It was Lucas who finally broke it. "Daniel wasn't just stealing from the company," he said, his voice low. "He was using our pharmaceutical division to test unapproved drugs on homeless populations." When I found out, his hands clenched into fists. I was going to blow the whistle. Donate half my fortune to fund proper clinics. Then suddenly, I'm waking up to your voice telling me about your sister's nursing school applications. Emma nearly dropped the antiseptic swab. The confession landed like a physical blow, rearranging her understanding of everything that had happened. This wasn't just corporate greed. It was monstrous, calculated evil. And Lucas, the ruthless billionaire the media loved to vilify, had been willing to sacrifice everything to stop it. The heart monitor beside them chose that moment to emit a sharp warning beep. Lucas's pulse had spiked, not from physical pain, Emma realized, but from the raw emotion flashing across his face. In that unguarded moment, She saw the true cost of his wealth. The isolation, the constant suspicion, the weight of knowing how many people would kill for what he had. When his hand came up to cradle her cheek, the gesture held a vulnerability that shattered her remaining professional detachment. "But the real reason I fought to stay alive in that coma," he whispered, his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized she'd shed, "was you. Your voice. The way you treated me like a person instead of a paycheck." Outside, the storm reached its crescendo, rain lashing against the windows like thousands of tiny fingers trying to get in. But here, in this sterile sanctuary, Emma found herself leaning into his touch, the last of her resistance crumbling. The heart monitor's steady rhythm seemed to synchronize with her own as she made a decision that would change everything. "Then let's make sure Daniel pays for what he did," she said, and watched as Lucas's eyes ignited with something fiercer than gratitude, something that looked an awful lot like hope. The safe house, though secure, could not be their hiding place forever. Lucas knew that Daniel Cross would not stop hunting them, especially now that Emma was involved. The billionaire's fingers clenched around his phone as he read the latest threat. "You can't hide forever, Lucas. And now your little nurse will pay the price." Attached was a photo of Emma's ransacked apartment, drawers overturned, furniture slashed, and most chillingly, a framed picture of her younger sister Lily, circled in red marker. Emma's breath hitched. Lily was supposed to be home tonight. She texted me that she was studying late at the library, but her voice cracked. Lucas's expression darkened. "He's using her as leverage. He wants us to panic, to run straight to her so he can ambush us." Emma's nursing instincts warred with her fear. She was trained to remain calm in emergencies, but this was different. This was her family. "We have to get to her before he does." Lucas shook his head. "If we go to her now, we're walking into his trap. We need to control the game." Lucas moved to a hidden wall panel, inputting a code. A compartment slid open, revealing a small arsenal, guns, cash, and a single USB drive. He held it up. "This has everything. Offshore accounts, drug trial records, even voice recordings of Daniel admitting to the murders. But he thinks it's the only copy." Emma's mind raced. "You want him to take it?" A cold smile touched Lucas's lips. "I'd want him to think he's won." The plan was audacious. Emma would pretend to betray Lucas, offering the USB to Daniel in exchange for her sister's safety. Meanwhile, Lucas would ensure the real evidence was already in the hands of the authorities. Emma hesitated. "What if he doesn't believe me?" Lucas's gaze locked onto hers. "He'll believe it because you'll sell it. You'll make him think you're terrified, that you'll do anything to save your sister. And when he takes the bait, we spring the trap." The meeting was set in an abandoned warehouse on the docks, a location Daniel would assume gave him the advantage. Emma walked in alone, the USB clutched in her trembling hand. The air smelled of salt water and rust, the distant sound of ships groaning against their moorings. Daniel emerged from the shadows, flanked by two armed men. He was impeccably dressed, his smile polished and cruel. Emma Carter, the devoted nurse. His voice was smooth, almost amused. "I admit, I didn't expect Lucas to trust someone so soft." Emma forced her voice to shake. I just want my sister. Take the files. Just let her go." Daniel's eyes gleamed as he plucked the USB from her fingers. "You're smarter than you look." He inserted it into a laptop, scanning the contents. His smirk widened. "Ah, Lucas, always so predictable." Emma's stomach twisted. Had they miscalculated? Then sirens. Daniel's head snapped up as blue and red lights flooded the warehouse. "You bitch," he snarled, lunging for her. But Lucas was already there, intercepting him with a brutal tackle. The two men crashed to the ground, fists flying. Emma scrambled back as police swarmed in, shouting orders. Daniel's face was a mask of fury. "You think this is over? I own half this city. Lucas wiped blood from his lip, his voice icy. Not anymore. A detective stepped forward, holding up a tablet. We've already frozen your assets, Mr. Cross. The evidence went public 10 minutes ago. As Daniel was dragged away in cuffs, Emma finally exhaled. Lily was safe. The authorities had the proof they needed, but the cost of their victory settled heavily on her shoulders. Lucas approached her, his knuckles bruised, his breathing ragged. "You were incredible," he murmured. Emma looked at him, really looked. The billionaire who had woken from a coma, who had fought not just for his life, but for justice. The man who had trusted her with everything. She reached for his hand. "We did it together." And in that moment, the trap they had set for Daniel became something else entirely. The beginning of something neither of them had expected. As Emma stepped into the abandoned warehouse, every nerve ending screamed danger. The cavernous space, once bustling with industrial activity, now stood as a hollow shell, its rusted metal beams casting spiderweb shadows under the flickering emergency lights. The air carried the scent of damp concrete and motor oil, undercut with something more primal, the metallic tang of impending violence. Lucas moved like a shadow beside her, his breathing controlled, but his knuckles white around the pistol grip. His transformation from comatose patient to tactical operator was complete. Every movement reflected special forces training Emma now realized he deliberately concealed. "Remember the plan," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the distant dripping of pipes. "We need him to confess on record." Daniel's grand entrance. The echoing clack of Italian leather soles announced Daniel Cross before he appeared. Dressed in a $10,000 Brioni suit that looked absurd in the derelict setting, he descended the metal staircase with theatrical slowness. 4 armed men materialized from the shadows, their weapons trained on Emma and Lucas. "Lucas, you look alive," Daniel sneered, adjusting his cufflinks. "I'd say it's good to see you, but we're well past lies, aren't we?" His gaze shifted to Emma. "And the Florence Nightingale routine was cute, but you should have stayed in your lane, sweetheart." The verbal duel. Lucas stepped forward, deliberately putting himself between Emma and the guns. "You got sloppy, Daniel. Offshore accounts? Unapproved drug trials? You used to be better at this." Daniel's polished facade cracked. "I built that company while you played philanthropist. Those formulas were worth billions." Emma saw her opening. With trembling hands, she pulled the fake USB from her pocket. "We have everything. The FDA reports. The victim statements." Her voice broke perfectly. "Just let my sister go." As Daniel snatched the decoy drive, Lucas activated the hidden recorder in his watch. The warehouse doors burst open. Not with police as expected, but with 3 black SUVs bearing the insignia of the Attorney General's Organized Crime Task Force. Daniel's laugh turned manic. "You think this changes anything? My lawyers will have me out before lunch." He pulled a sleek handgun from his waistband, the same model that had put Lucas in a coma. Emma watched as years of suppressed rage erupted from Lucas. Every punch carried the weight of betrayed trust, of lives destroyed by Daniel's greed. When Daniel's head finally cracked against the concrete, his expensive haircut matted with blood and motor oil, the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. As federal agents swarmed, Emma rushed to Lucas's side. Blood seeped through his shirt, but his grip on her hand was ironclad. "The real evidence," she whispered. "Already with the Wall Street Journal," he gasped. This was never about legal justice. It was about making sure the world saw who he really was. In the flashing red and blue lights, Emma saw something unexpected in Lucas's eyes. Not triumph, but exhaustion. The billionaire who'd fought his way back from death now looked every bit the mortal man. When she pressed a scarf to his wound, his whispered thank you carried more weight than any declaration of love could. With Daniel behind bars, Lucas's name was cleared. True to his word, he donated $50 million, to Silvercrest Hospital and offered Emma a choice. "Stay with me," he whispered, holding her hands. "Not as my nurse, as the woman who saved me in every way possible." Tears welled in her eyes. After a lifetime of caring for others, someone was finally choosing her. She smiled. "Okay." And as they kissed under the city lights, Emma realized, sometimes miracles happen in the most unexpected ways.